Good evening, I'm John Palmer, and this is NBC Nightly News. In one of the most controversial acts since taking office, President Reagan visited Bitburg today, laying a wreath at the German burial ground containing more than 1,000 graves, including those of 49 members of Hitler's elite SS Corps. Here's White House correspondent Chris Wallace.
It will be one of the lasting images of his presidency. Ronald Reagan setting foot in a cemetery containing SS graves. But with the president determined to keep his commitment to West German Chancellor Kohl, Reagan media advisors did their best all day to limit the damage. Here, the president and chancellor walked separately, the two World War II foes, Generals Matthew Ridgway and Johannes Steinhoff. The ceremony was cut from 20 minutes to 8. First, a double wreath laying. Then the playing of the German equivalent of taps. As the ceremony ended, the generals shook hands. The president would later say, reaching over the graves in reconciliation. But in the streets of Bitburg, there was no reconciliation. Riot police blocked 1,000 demonstrators as they tried to march to the cemetery to protest Mr. Reagan's visit.
As a Jew, I'm very angry, and as an American, I'm very ashamed.
There was a very different scene, though, when the president arrived at Bitburg Air Base, a campaign-style celebration of U.S.-German friendship. Mr. Reagan dealt directly with the Bitburg controversy.
Some old wounds have been reopened, and this I regret very much.
He reached out to American veterans.
Our gesture of reconciliation with the German people today in no way minimizes our love and honor for those who fought and died for our country.
And to the survivors of the Holocaust.
Many of you are worried that reconciliation means forgetting. Well, I promise you, we will never forget.
Chancellor Kohl was emotional as he thanked the president for coming to Bitburg to bring their countries together. The president dealt in powerful symbols all day. This morning, he made an unannounced stop at the grave of Germany's first post-war chancellor, Konrad Adenauer. Critics had suggested that he honor people who fought against Hitler. But by far the most powerful symbol was the president's visit to the killing fields of Bergen-Belsen. More than 50,000 people died here, their bodies pushed into mass graves. The Reagans toured the camp, passing mounds where thousands are buried. Before this controversy, the president said he did not want to visit a concentration camp and open old wounds. But today he talked plainly about those wounds.
Here they lie, never to hope, never to pray, never to love, never to heal, never to laugh, never to cry.
And Mr. Reagan read from the diary of the most famous victim here, 15-year-old Anne Frank, who kept her optimism even in the Holocaust.
I think that it will all come right, that this cruelty too will end, and that peace and tranquility will return again. 8 months later, this sparkling young life ended here at Bergen-Belsen.
White House officials hoped that most Americans would focus on these powerful words and pictures, that Mr. Reagan's few moments at Bitburg would be forgotten or at least understood. Chris Wallace, NBC News, with the president in Germany.
The Soviet news media had a field day describing the president's visit to Bitburg. The Soviet news agency TASS called the visit, quote, an insult to the memory of those who were killed in the sacred battle for freedom. In Israel, there were small demonstrations in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv protesting the president's visit to the Bitburg cemetery. About 30 Israeli teenagers picketed the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv and asked for signatures on a petition condemning the visit. There were protests in this country as well. Jennifer McLogan reports.
In Miami, picket signs went up early. Protesters stood in front of Biscayne Bay's Torch of Friendship, condemning President Reagan's cemetery visit. And in Broward County, war medals of veterans were collected. They will be shipped to the White House in protest. 200 people gathered in Arlington National Cemetery to pay tribute to America's defenders and liberators. But once again, the talk turned to Mr. Reagan in Germany.
The reason for the outcry about Bitburg is precisely this: the attempt to obscure and absolve a nation of its moral responsibilities, both to the victims and to humanity.
A 12-hour candlelight vigil was held in Cincinnati's Fountain Square. There, American servicemen and their families kept candles burning in memory of the Nazi atrocities. And in New York City, thousands marched down Fifth Avenue in the annual March for Soviet Jews. But this year, much of it focused on the day's events in Bitburg.
On a day when it appears that our president has forgotten, we are remembering.
It was not dignified for him to go there. There are no excuse for it.
We have to look to the future, but we can't forget the terrible past.
The Reverend Jerry Falwell and Coretta Scott King were among 43 prominent Americans who signed an open letter critical of the president's Bitburg visit. The letter was printed as an ad in Sunday's New York Times. Hundreds of veterans gathered in Long Island National Cemetery at Pine Lawn. Many of those who fought and survived World War II said Bitburg overshadowed what was meant to be a commemoration of the 40th anniversary of VE Day. So too said Jewish groups in California, who walked a mile into the Veterans Administration Cemetery in West Los Angeles for a day of speeches reproaching the president's decision. And in Westfield, New Jersey, Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel met with school children at Temple Emmanuel. Even they were curious about Bitburg.
You've had your hand up all morning, so you get a chance.
What's your reaction with what Ronald Reagan has done now?
I am puzzled and I'm saddened by him and for him.
Wiesel told the children it was a pity the president chose to go, but no one ever should hold grudges. Jennifer McLogan, NBC News, New York.
Tomorrow, the president flies to Madrid for talks with leaders of the Spanish government. But if today's demonstrations in